I think the biggest thing is countries like the United States, European countries, basically highly developed countries that have the economic ability to develop technologies that are like non-fossil fuel technologies to generate electricity. We have the ability to get them really, really efficient. So countries like, developed countries need to put their excess money into making these technologies really, really efficient. And then what we need to do is we need to hand them off for free, basically, to countries that are developing right now, and or who are going to be developing and going through what's called the demographic transition in the next 50 to 100 years, where their populations are going to be exploding, so they're going to be using a lot of energy. And right now they're set up to use coal, oil, and gas, just like the United States did as we went through our industrial revolution. Abhinav, what will happen to the people who work under the oil industry when the economy goes green? That's a good question. It would most likely be a slow transition. I wouldn't, it's not like it's going to overnight just stop. I mean, you can kind of ask the same question in regards to like, what is going to happen to all of the people who are truck drivers when we have automated driving? Like, what happens to those people? And that's a real issue. And a lot of people are talking about, a universal basic income kind of move, where it's as people move towards automation or transition, and you have a certain labor force that no longer has like as much employment. What can happen is we can supplement that by giving some universal basic income. So it's like kind of like everyone gets a certain amount of money per year, and that allows them to pursue other things. That's one option. You could talk about retraining, but that's not always the easiest thing to do. If you have like people that are older and who have worked in a certain industry their entire life, it's not as easy just to retrain them. I don't remember if you remember the meme, the like learn to code meme that existed for a while, where it was sort of like, all these people that are losing jobs as things automate. Well, it's just like, we'll just learn to code and go get a job in Silicon Valley. It's not as easy as it sounds, especially if you've spent your whole life learning one trade, and now you're trying to go back and learn a whole new job, but you're competing with younger people who are like literally in their prime as far as their education. They've got a huge advantage over you. So are we playing with the same people over and over again? Do we want to open it up again? I think what I'm going to do is open it up again. What do we got here? Let me take a quick look. All right, we're going to do, just to make it fair so not the same people playing over and over again, I'm going to restart the game. And then it's first 10 in. First 10 in. First 10 in. Alexi, what's up, Alexi? What do you think? Wait, someone else asked a question. Alexi, I'll answer yours real quick, and then Jack, you asked a question. So Alexi, what do you think about Elon Musk wanting to terraform Mars to make it more Earth-like? What do I think about it? I think it's... So you got these... So Elon Musk is the guy who's sort of like... Who it seems to me like he's at a point where he's like, we're just going to abandon Earth and we are going to go and live somewhere else, which is one thing to do for sure. But it seems like a little bit of a giving up. In my opinion, it seems like it's giving up a little bit on Earth. But I think it's good to have some people thinking like that, and that's awesome. And luckily he's wealthy enough to sort of make some movement on that, which is great. But I think it's also important to like not abandon Earth entirely, because that's a big stretch. And terraforming Mars and living on Mars is a long way away, right? And it's like, are we gonna be able to do that? I think it's better to sort of have your eggs in multiple baskets, so to speak. But I think focusing on Earth is probably a better move, although I think it's interesting. And then Jack, you asked, can you give strategies to mitigate climate change and drawbacks? can you give... Sorry, let me parse your question. Can you give strategies to mitigate climate change and drawbacks to switching to non-fossil fuel-based power sources? So you want some strategies for mitigating climate change, and on top of that, you want some drawbacks to switching to non-fossil fuel. Yeah, sure. The easy drawback to switching to non-fossil fuels is just simply an economic thing, right? Fossil fuels are cheap, easy to get. There's still a pretty decent amount of them, and our infrastructure is extremely established for this. Our power grid is in most of the country is entirely based off of, whoopsie, didn't want to do that, is entirely based off of fossil fuels. Things like coal are like really, really cheap. Like they're so easy to get, so easy to burn, easy to transport, you know. That's the drawbacks it's entirely economic. We have to spend more money and set up more infrastructure to establish, to establish these kinds of these new sources. Are there any other drawbacks? Other drawbacks? What are some other drawbacks? I guess you could also say loss of jobs. Like there's going to be a whole sector, a whole industrial sector. Oh, it's red. It's red. How do I report? Yeah, so I think the drawbacks are mostly economic from all that, and then strategies to mitigate climate change. Well, I mean, the strategies for mitigating climate change could be just transitioning away from fossil fuels. That's like the key thing. So fossil fuels is huge because that's the number one contributor to the greenhouse gas emissions that lead to climate change. But I think the biggest thing is what I think from all I've read and from what I understand, it seems to me like there's a huge focus on these things like big companies have these like advertising campaigns and slogans to say we're reducing our carbon footprint by doing like these sort of simple things. But I think the picture, the changes is not like individuals doing like slight changes to their habits. If everyone were to do it, sure, it could make a little bit of a difference. But I think the biggest difference is just instead of trying to change human behavior, we have to admit that human behavior is essentially humans are going to do what they're going to do, right? They're going to be selfish. They're going to act in selfish ways. It's almost impossible to get people to act in a way that preserves future generations. So like we're evolved and we are hardwired to like protect and like set ourselves and our close relatives up as best as we can, right? And trying to think about future generations is almost impossible. It's almost like not even on most people's radar. So they're just going to act in a way that makes their life the easiest. So we have to just assume that that's going to happen. And so the changes have to come from a level where natural human instincts and behaviors don't cause the kind of damage they cause, which means we have to transition to less fossil fuels, maybe reducing our I think lab-grown meat would be a great one, because then people we don't have to raise the amount of livestock we raise, which generate all the methane gas that cause climate change. Transitioning away from fossil fuels would be great. Practicing better sustainable city development, so we're not causing as much deforestation, so we have more forest coverage, which helps suck CO2 out of the atmosphere. What else? Yeah, so it's like, and here's the big one. Here's the big one. Sorry guys about this. I'm gonna skip because I'm not paying attention. I think the biggest thing is countries like the United States, European countries, basically highly developed countries that have the economic ability to develop technologies that are like non-fossil fuel technologies to generate electricity. We have the ability to get them really, really efficient. So countries like, developed countries need to put their excess money into making these technologies really, really efficient. And then what we need to do is we need to hand them off for free, basically, to countries that are developing right now, and or who are going to be developing and going through what's called the demographic transition in the next 50 to 100 years, where their populations are going to be exploding, so they're going to be using a lot of energy. And right now they're set up to use coal, oil, and gas, just like the United States did as we went through our industrial revolution. Okay, yellow is being sus, pink is following me around. And so we have to think of it like this, like the developed countries right now that are so rich, how did we get rich? Because of luck, right? We were able to establish ourselves in places on Earth that had good amount of resources. And then from that, we got a head start. We got able to capitalize on fossil fuels. We used the energy there to create infrastructure and technology. And we just sort of now are really rich compared to countries that didn't have those. And because we have that advantage, we need to use that advantage to essentially invest in, shoot, I didn't see who did that. Invest in like reusable energy, like renewable energy, and then literally just hand it off to the countries who don't have the money to do that, and say, okay, here you go, we used our advantage to generate this, here it is for free, so you don't have to rely on fossil fuels as you go through your industrial revolution / economic development like we did. And that will be huge. Yeah, sorry, a long spiel there.